December of 1680, a massive comet appeared in the sky, and it was visible from all across the world. So we have records of this comet appearing in China, in Peru, in North America, and thousands of documents all over Europe. In the months after that, several more comets appeared. And it's very unusual for so many phenomena, all of them quite bright and quite extreme, to appear so close together. So there was a kind of conversation about comets that happened in the 1680s. And the most famous member of that conversation was Isaac Newton, who developed his theories of gravitation, largely in light of all of the comets that were seen in this period. But in the Americas, there were local conversations, and there were conversations that stretched across the Atlantic. So you can make a few generalizations about who was observing this comet and who was writing about it. There are a few different groups. The first group would be professional astrologers or almanac writers. The second group would be religious personnel, and they were particularly important in North America, where religion was the most important factor in how this comet was interpreted. A third group would be natural philosophers or astronomers who were just interested in taking measurements or asking questions like, what is the comet made of? How might it cause changes in the weather? What is its pattern, and how can we track that mathematically? And finally, there's a fourth group that's you might call miscellaneous. And these are educated gentlemen or other people who might be less educated, who simply felt the need to comment on the comet. So statesmen, for example, or people passing through a particular region. And in terms of differences between regions in the Americas, in New England, as I said, religious personnel were the most important group. But it's important to note that these categories overlap. So someone like Increase Mather is a preacher, a religious man, but he also has a position at Harvard, and he's communicating with people across the Atlantic, and his observations end up in the Royal Society. In Latin America, it's harder to say which group was dominant, because the conversations were quite local. So in Mexico City, there's a vigorous debate over this comet between some very famous personalities. Carlos Sigüenza y Góngora, Eusebio Kino argued over the nature of this comet and what it meant. And part of their argument was about what disciplinary lens you should use to understand this object. Comets were viewed as omens, as wonders, as prodigies, as signs from God, and also as objects in the sky. They were interpreted in all these ways by various different people. And again, they're not mutually exclusive. In terms of readership, the comet, of course, everybody could see it when they walked out their window. All you need is a clear sky, and you can have an opinion on this comet. So there was a great deal of interest, which I think helped drive the number of documents that we're seeing. Almanacs were the most popular text by far, other than religious texts. And that's true across Europe and across the colonies, that almanacs had an extremely wide readership. And so almanac writers had followings, and like I said, many almanac writers took the opportunity to print a new treatise. So they might have an immediate pamphlet, a prediction about the comet, and then in their almanac the following year they could say, look, I predicted there would be a drought, and lo and behold, there has been a drought. Buy my product. I am a great astrologer. So there's a commercial market happening here too, and people would collect little snippets and keep a record of the comet. We also get a sense of the readership from the treatises themselves. In Latin America, it was very, very common for writers to denigrate the superstition of a lot of their supposed readers. So, for example, in Peru, we have a letter that was published where ostensibly it's a letter from a statesman to his son about the comet. And for a lot of the letter, he's kind of chastising his son for not knowing the natural philosophy, not knowing the mathematics, and for the general superstition of some people that he was interacting with. Another way that people might interact with these sources, particularly in New England, was in a sermon. So Increase Mather and several other preachers in New England would give sermons to their community about how this was a warning from God and they needed to pay attention to it. In fact, Increase Mather was, in his treatises on comets, he's visibly worried that his congregation is not paying enough attention to the comet, that they're kind of interested in it, they think it's pretty or something like that, but they're not taking it seriously as a warning from God on the entire community and a need to reform. Yes, there was a sense in which the scientific activity in Latin America was still within the mold of scholastic science. This was not explicitly Copernican or something like that, but it didn't need to be in order to engage in important astronomical debates. And those who participated in those debates were very aware of this and were very straightforward in talking about the use of empirical evidence. They were interested in experience rather than in the use of old text. They were adept at reframing these texts to be, in fact, subversive of truths that might have been held by a particular orthodoxy, and to introduce new ideas, and even ideas that might seem subversive in terms of religion, such as the idea that a comet was not, in fact, a sign from God. Secular interpretations were much more common in Mexico or in Peru than they were in North America, where even in cases where an individual writer was very sophisticated in their natural philosophy, maybe Copernican, maybe even Newtonian, there was almost always a religious cast and a willingness and a desire to see the activity of God in the appearance of this object in the sky. But the fact that we can't draw generalizations about the relative weight across various regions is interesting in itself, because if you're thinking about broader narratives about, say, science in Latin America or science in New England, we should be able to draw broader conclusions. But in fact, the sources surprise us. The conversation in every location is much more diverse than certainly than I initially expected when I went to go look at these sources.